If you're a loyal GAZ-man viewer, um, thanks, I guess. Also, you may remember this man, Vic Cumberland. Saviour of St Kilda in the 1900s, footy missionary to New Zealand, and very old man. His career spanned over 20 years, making his final appearance at the age of 43. Although, to be fair, it was in a 1920 St Kilda side that even I could have made it into. Nonetheless, despite the constant increase in the athleticism and longevity of modern footballers, it took nearly a century for someone to join Vic in the 40 club. Why? The first reason is war. The average age of the VFL was never higher than post-World War I. Legions of young men had gone off to fight and every club had suffered losses. The old fellas, too old to be seen as fodder for the hungry war machine, hung around past their use-by date while playing lists were rejuvenated, including our hero Vic, as well as someone very, very special to us. Hello, Big Dave, could not resist throwing you in here. And from then on, in the first half-century after Cumberland retired, it was just a matter of professionalism. Football didn't pay enough to sustain a 20-year career. Even by the 1960s, guys were winning Brownlow medals as amateurs. Then as the game got faster, players got faster. They attacked contests faster and hit each other faster. And harder. Harder hits meant the end came faster. By the time the stars of the game were on star contracts, the average player was far taller, far bigger and far quicker, and had twice as many prodigies fighting for his spot who are younger and faster still. This was no country for old men.
Hey, that's the name of the show.
Through the 60s and 70s, the average player age cratered to all-time lows, and this wasn't helped by America's stupid fucking war with Vietnam. St Kilda's premiership squad of 66 were the third oldest in the league that year. They were, on average, 23, lower than the season tallies of all but 14 league-wide averages. It took until the 1980s for the arms race of harder, faster, stronger to eclipse the average sizes of new recruits. The switch from zone recruiting to a national draft then turned access to the country's best 18-year-olds into an open fight. Recruitment strategies shifted from selecting the best talent available regardless of age to picking by potential. These kids, for the most part, were investments, nowhere near ready for prime time. Older players had more time now to play out their careers, and as they did so, they became valuable on-field mentors to those kids. The age of the ageless was here. The first wave of expansion teams relied on experienced campaigners to guide their rookies, and with the addition of a 25.4-year-old Crows side, the average age of the league bumped to 24.5 for the first time since Adolph's bunker copped the brain matter repaint. The second wave of expansion teams knocked that number down with a whole host of nervous youngsters as the talent pools dried, but since then the age has climbed by 1.5 years. Club legends are now being allowed to retire on their own terms. With a higher athletic base and shallower talent pool than ever before, these guys pushed further and further into the 30s, and amazingly, some of them were still crucial to their team's performance. And today, we're going to take a look at the guys who got the closest to the 40 club, and the one guy who managed to make it. 15 guys have played past their 38th birthdays. 5 have done it in the AFL era. We'll start with a man who's no stranger to being an outlier on graphs on this channel. Michael Tuck was the initial Iron Man. Despite playing 16 games in his first 2 seasons, the man went on to average 21.3 games per year in a career that began 3 years after man walked on the moon and ended months after the first website was created. Even till the end, at the age of 38, his game relied on power running, and he was a joy to watch. He posted 2 BOGs in his final season, but could he have carried on? His numbers were dipping, and the 1991 Premiership did give him a great chance to go out on a high. He maybe could have, but he's probably glad he didn't. After all, he held the games played record for over 20 years. Except he didn't. It was broken in 2001 by this man in his 337th game, and yes, I hear you crying out that Tuck played 426 matches, Hawthorn fans, but Bradley had 4 seasons of professional top-level footy under his belt before joining the Blues, 3 of those being best and fairest winners at Port Adelaide. He added another 3 best and fairest at Carlton and 3 All-Australian jerseys after that, the last one only 2 months before turning 34. He was named in the centre in the All-Australian team at an age that very few guys had even played at before him. Even toward the end, he was incredible, providing valuable drive from halfback and earning 3 votes in his 375th and final Carlton game at the age of 38 years, 291 days, with a sum total of 499 senior games under his belt. 2 international rules games took him to the other 500 club, of which he is the sole member. Could he have gone on to 40? Well, not only did his form suggest that he could, he almost needed to. Carlton's big salary cap oopsie-daisy and its penalties were revealed weeks after he retired, a decision which, in itself, wasn't entirely his. He and Stephen Silvani made tentative comeback plans, but they fell through. Even if he did suit up, and even if somehow he and the man-made disaster that was the 2003 Carlton side managed to make the grand final, his 40th birthday would still have been a month afterward. While his numbers would still likely have been good, it wouldn't make any sense for him to be on that list in 2004. We've covered Robert Harvey, the ageless veteran and one of my favourite players of all time. By the time 2008 rolled around, Harvey had become the first man to play in 20 consecutive seasons, joining only Cumberland in having careers last 2 decades. But his career had started at the tender age of 16. His 2008 season was immense. He hit 500 disposals for only the 2nd time in the last 11 years, and went at nearly a goal assist per game, good for 10th in the league. He did all this despite spending less time on the park than ever before, and it looked like he could power on to 400 games. He didn't, of course, retiring not long after turning 37. Yeah, 20-year career and he ended at 37. That's what happens when you start well before you're allowed to drink your first beer. 40, therefore, would have been a tough ask for him. But not for another Harvey. We're going to touch on him too in a later video, but I need to tell his story. Brent Harvey popped up right as Robert won his Brownlows and dazzled us all for years with his run and dash. He was invincible. From the moment he made his debut to his retirement, inverted commas, which we'll get to, he missed 47 games. Total. Here's a list of all North players to have played 47 games or less. Harvey's absences lasted longer than all of their careers, and yet he missed less than 1 in 10 games while on an AFL list. That's nuts. No one whose career is old enough to buy a beer comes close to the 92% of possible games played that this man, who was a running midfielder, got. As he approached 40, he showed no signs of slowing. He got 15 Brownlow votes in his age 36 season. The next year, well, he only got more disposals, more clearances, and increased his scoring accuracy. He had his 400th game that year, and he chipped in with just the 27 touches, 2 goals, and 7 marks. Was he best on? No. He was second best on. You would forgive Brent for slowing down a bit after this as he turned 38. He didn't. 496 disposals, 36 goals with 15 assists, 98 marks, 88 inside 50s, 56 tackles. This is a remarkable stat line. You know how I know? Here's everyone else in the AFL in 2016 who got or exceeded those numbers. That's right, no one else. The only ones who come close are Lance Franklin and Toby Green. Unless they're, charging at you, that's pretty good company to share. He missed out on his first leading goal scorer trophy by 4 goals as a rotating midfielder. You want to know how many guys in the league in 2016 had more running bounces than a man who was born in the 1970s? 4. 14 guys had 6-goal hauls in 2016. 10 were key forwards, as you'd expect. 2 were smalls with a back catalogue of similar or better performances. The other 2? Alex Fasolo, and a man who debuted when Fasolo had just turned 4 years old. I cannot stress enough how good 2016 Brent Harvey was, not even just for a 38-year-old. These numbers were elite for anyone. Harvey broke Michael Tuck's VFL AFL games record on the 30th of July. 24 touches, 5 marks, and a Joe the Goose goal. Decent game, nothing compared to the 32-touch, 3-goal, 5-tackle performance that almost won the game against the team that would nearly win the flag and netted him a Brownlow vote on the 20th of August. 4 days after that, he was told that his contract would not be renewed. And look, I will bang on about this in the next video about him, and the decision to sack their icon would deservedly bite Brad Scott in his sizable arse, but Brent Harvey had a legitimate chance to get to 40. He'd had a PB for goal scoring while still getting midfield minutes. He showed in the next year's Legends game that he still had game-breaking pace. He would have been a great small forward and could have rotated through the midfield and would have been the perfect sub as he approached and probably passed 40. But Brad Scott decided to shotgun his club at the knees by axing 2, maybe 3 Hall of Famers and replacing them with the footy equivalent of home brand instant noodles. Loyal GAZ-man viewers may remember me talking about one of the Adelaide Football Club's worst trades. They gave up pick 12 for a serviceable small Port Adelaide forward named Matthew Bode. In 2007, Bode retired, aged 27. That year, the player Port picked up with pick 12 played in his second grand final. He would go on to play for another 13 years. He retired in 2021, his football career nearly old enough to drink in America. Bodes, meanwhile, wouldn't have even got him to an age where he could get shot in one of their high schools. Sean Burgoyne was named Silk for good reason. Even in his 30s, he was a smoother operator than most of the league, regularly producing match-winning performances wherever he played. His last season was announced well before 2021 started. His numbers were hardly bad, but certainly indicative of someone on their way out, especially his appearances as the sub. His last match was 2 months shy of his 39th birthday, and it was a nice 7-rebound, 21-touch display that would have been a solid send-off if the Hawks would have been asked enough to hold on to a 5-goal lead with 10 minutes to go. Even if he'd played on, 40 would have been too much of a stretch. It would take the exact right type of player, exceptional injury luck, and a great deal of talent to make it to 40, and amazingly, someone already had. For over 30 years, there was only one type of 400 gamer. Smaller, wiry players with amazing pace in their young days that had good enough foot skill and footy smarts to hang around past 35. Big bodies meant attending bigger contests and copping bigger hits. There was no way a key position player would make 400. Hell, the Madden brothers were the only ones to get remotely close, and they were both cooked by the end. Enter Dustin Fletcher. He was tall but had a BMI in the negatives. He was fearless but quietly spoken. He was slight but had the biggest damn kick in the league. Most importantly though, he was versatile. He was equally at home playing on Fraser Gehrig as he was Mark Lacroix. His height and lankiness gave him the frame to nullify power forwards, and his light frame and loping stride enabled him to perform chase-down tackles on ludicrously quick players. Here he is 2 weeks from his 36th birthday, running down Jeff Garlett, one of the AFL's fastest players, and a man who was born 36 months before Fletcher was drafted. Fletcher played 3 games after his 40th birthday. The last one was special, ticking over to 400 games. In 2015, this made him 400 gamer number 3, and the first since Michael Tuck passed the mark 25 years prior. Unfortunately, he injured his groin in that match, and that was that. He'd done it just in time though, despite having the longest career on record. Fletch never once played every game in a season. He missed at least 2 games each year, missing 89 games in total. He made it to the 400 club by a matter of days. Even if he'd opted to go around one more time, he would have been one of the Essendon 34 being banned for the entire 2016 season. So, what have we learned? Nothing, really, and that's the way I like it. Well, aside from the fact that while Harvey's record may fall to a currently active player no less, Cumberland's sure won't. Regardless of talent, form, or athleticism, 40 is a birthday cake candle too far. The AFL really is no country for old men.